I'll just get my colleague Adel to join us.
Okay.
He will be setting up the robot. Just takes a couple of minutes.
This is Kai Olav Ellefsen, Associate Professor at the University of Oslo and leader of the Robotics and Intelligent Systems Research Group. He's showing our podcast producer Alice Carnevali around his department, a bright and modern space with various offices filled with robots and mechanical objects. Together with his colleague, postdoctoral researcher Adel Bazelizadeh, the trio are on their way to meet Tiago.
So this is our robotics lab and our motion capture lab. As you see in the roof here, we have lots of these cameras that can help us track how things are moving around. So we do use that a bit to analyze how robots move when they're performing some task. And at the moment, we have a PhD student analyzing robots learning to push objects around. So then he put this on here to measure exactly how this moves as Tiago pushes it around.
Tiago isn't a person of Spanish origin. It's a robot produced by PAL Robotics, a company based in Barcelona.
And this is him, is Tiago. Him.
Yeah, this does take up it all.
I don't know.
Well, we can call him he.
Okay,
Yeah.
Tiago. And what does Tiago do?
So Tiago is meant to be an assistive robot that helps people, for example, in a hospital or in their house with the day-to-day tasks. So picking up things for them, helping them get dressed or undressed, helping with the simple practical tasks around the house. Tiago specifically is probably designed foremost for being a research tool or for testing out, prototyping different behaviors.
Kai and his colleagues use Tiago for robot learning, essentially to test how the robot moves in different environments, how it changes with people, and what can be improved. For instance, on a table in the corner of the room sits Connect 4, the popular board game with red and blue tokens, which an intern had been playing with Tiago to test the robot and its reactions.
Sometimes when Tiago does this, he will misunderstand something and sort of smash the board instead of continuing to play.
If at this point you're picturing a silver humanoid with arms and legs, you should adjust your imagination. Tiago is more akin to Spielberg's creation, E.T. Here's Adel Bazelizadeh.
It's a mobile manipulator. It means that it has a mobile base that makes him able to move around, and it also has an arm manipulator that makes him able to interact with the environment, like with users and so on. And as you see, it has a gripper that can grasp things, pick up objects, and hand over things to the user. It is its head. There is a camera here that using this camera, you can see the environment.
And the joystick there is how you move it?
It is for teleoperation. We can program it to move autonomously, but it's also possible to control it using a joystick. We can move its movement. It also has a torso joint that makes him able to adjust his height, actually. Yeah.
How much high can Tiago go?
I think if I scratch his arm up to 2 meters, I think, or more than 2 meters. Yeah, I'm not sure, but something around that.
Tiago, with his smiling and somewhat friendly face, is still sensitive to changes in his environment. But perhaps one day, once optimized, he'll be deployed in people's homes, helping those with physical difficulties perform basic tasks. Maybe many, many years from now, when I'm old, he'll even be in mine, loading and unloading the dishwasher. But for now, where does the field of robotics stand today? Welcome to Euronews Tech Talks, the podcast that explores the digital, technological, and scientific landscape shaping Europe. I'm your host, James Thomas. After more than 2 years of this podcast, we've finally decided to dive into a topic that often comes up when discussing technological advancement and artificial intelligence: robotics. In the next 3 episodes, we'll be traveling to Northern Europe to meet experts and robots shaping the technological landscape. As usual, we'll start today with a Q&A session, putting your questions to Professor Kai Olav Ellefsen, who you met at the beginning of the episode. So grab yourself a cup of tea and let's get started. It's the 21st of October, and our podcast producer Alice Carnevali is in Oslo at the Nobel Peace Center. Outside, the rain is pouring, the sky is grey, and the air is cold. Inside, students and young professionals are taking part in a vibrant networking session organised by the Oslo Innovation Week. Participants come from a variety of backgrounds. Some work in healthcare, others specialise in tech and AI, and others in economics. The atmosphere is bustling. People are chatting and vibing to the notes of AI-generated music. Alice is moving through the groups, talking to people and collecting questions about robotics. One of the first doubts arose during a conversation with Sarah, a nursing student, who explained to Alice how she uses robotics in the hospital.
I don't know if it's robotics, but helping patients to get out of bed. Then we use machines because we're not strong enough as people to lift someone up who's maybe 100 pounds. Then we use machines that connect to the wall, and maybe in the future we will have more robotics that can help the health system help other people. I don't know.
No, but I mean, you raise an important point, what can we call a robot actually? Is an automated machine? Does it have to actually look like a robot, with arms and legs?
Let's hear Kai's answer to the question.
I think different people have a bit different definitions of what a robot is. There's maybe no strict definition that everyone agrees on. But the word itself comes from a play by a Czech author from the 1920s, actually, so it's 100 years old, more or less now. His name was Karel Čapek, and he wrote a play about someone that were chemically engineering humans to be sort of slaves or programmable humans. So that was the original use of the word robot. But robots don't have to be humans or humanoids. Also, a vacuum cleaner that cleans your floor can be a robot. So my definition is sort of that a robot has three components. The first is it has to be able to sense its environment, to use some sensors like cameras, sound sensors, maybe touch sensors to get an idea of what's going on around it. And the second is it has to process what it senses, take some decision about what to do in the world. And the third it has to act. So it has to have some motors or something like an arm or actuator or some other mechanism that lets it take an action to change the world around it. So it has to perceive, reason, and then act. Then you have a robot. So a microwave probably doesn't fulfill those things because it doesn't really perceive much about what's going on. But maybe a clothes washing machine could be a robot by that definition, because it perceives how dirty is the water and decides how to continue the cleaning program depending on how dirty things are.
The term robot appeared for the first time in the play Are You Are by the Czech intellectual Karel Čapek. Already in the 1920s, the author was imagining robots revolting against humans, a fear which, as we'll hear later, is still relevant today. But let's continue with the questions, this time with someone from our team who's interested in understanding the major sectors of the economy and society in which robotics is particularly advanced.
Robots have traditionally been used mainly for tasks that are very repeatable, where you have to do the same thing over and over again, because that's what robots are really good at. And they're also not usually so good at dealing with changes, if an object changes or a process changes. So therefore, they're used a lot in manufacturing, things like manufacturing cars, also because that kind of manufacturing has very heavy objects that can be dangerous for humans to handle or difficult. So manufacturing in factories, also sort of logistics operations in factories. We see them used to some degree also in things like where you have a central with lots of packages that you want to send to people. You have robotic systems that can load and unload packages in very standardized areas. But now we're seeing them move into a bit less repeatable and more dynamic environments. So things like agriculture is a situation where you have a lot of structure, like a strawberry field has a very clear structure, but things are also a little bit different. So one strawberry is never the same as the other one, and you have to always pick them in a little bit different ways. So a situation like that is much harder for a robot to handle, but a lot of research now goes into getting them from these very structured environments to those that are a bit less structured, like agriculture.
The first robots as we know them were created in the 1950s and started being used in the 1960s.
A robot for industry. And this is it, Unimate, a machine that can reach out to 7 feet and perform a multitude of tasks in factory or laboratory as skillfully as a man, but without getting tired. It's controlled by a built-in memory system. You just lead it once through the required motions, and it can then repeat them 24 hours a day, week after week.
Unimate is considered to be the first industrial robot in history. It's a kind of mechanical arm created by US inventor George C. DeVol. The robot initially found little success, but its patent was later acquired by Joseph Engelberger, who was able to put it on the market. As for agricultural robots, we'll explore this field in the next episode of Euronews Tech Talks, where we'll visit the offices of a company specializing in this industry. But before that, Sarah and another participant in the networking session had 2 other very similar questions.
So my name is Anna, and I'm wondering what role it will play in healthcare in 5 years. Yeah.
When will robotics become more relevant in the health industry, in the sort of caring of other people?
Robots, they like best situations that are very repeatable, where things can be done over and over again. In healthcare, things are usually a bit more dynamic and unpredictable, so no 2 patients are alike. So therefore, robots are harder to apply there than in a factory. But they are still applied for some things, like assisting humans during surgery. So there are surgery robots that are controlled by a human, but it's a robot that actually moves things around inside the patient because they can be very precise, and you can make like smaller interventions in a patient than you would if a human was doing it alone. I don't think they will really take over these kind of jobs, but maybe assist more so that the doctors and surgeons can focus more on what's most important for having a human contact. Because patients will always need the contact with a human, but maybe robots can do some more of the assistive tasks. You also have robots that work with some logistics operations in hospitals. I've seen that myself in Norwegian hospitals. You have robots that transport around the dirty bed sheets around the hospital for cleaning and so on. So they can take away some of these kind of boring logistic tasks that a human would otherwise do.
Robots are slowly making their way into our healthcare systems. For instance, in April, the UK's National Institute for Health and Care Excellence approved the use of 11 robotic surgery systems to help patients undergoing soft tissue and orthopedic procedures. Some of these technologies involve precise mechanical arms controlled by a surgeon from a console, while others are handheld. We know what happens in the UK isn't representative of how robotics is used in hospitals around the world, or even across Europe. Depending on where you grew up and where you live, the idea of robots in healthcare might sound either like science fiction or like everyday reality. So, another question we asked Kai was which countries are more advanced in robotics?
Yeah, so right now, China and the USA seem to be in the lead, perhaps also Japan. Europe is also pretty good at some types of robots, maybe mainly industrial applied robots. Germany is quite far ahead. They do quite a lot of work on industrial robots. But there are also, in many European countries, there are quite specialized companies that make a robot for a very special purpose. But for these advanced humanoids that you see quite a lot in media lately, I think the US and China are in the front. And the reason why is partly perhaps because of strategic plans by the government in those countries to be leading in AI and robotics, but also because they have quite a lot of talent already in AI and robotics, and that tends to attract more talent and more companies to come and work there because they know they can work with the best people in the world. They have good funding and good conditions for doing that kind of work.
At this point in the episode, you're probably wondering when we're going to talk about one of the most obvious aspects of robotics.
AI.
Now, before jumping straight into the questions students shared with us, we wanted first to explore with Kai the relationship between AI and robotics.
AI and robotics have been quite a strong combination ever since the field of AI was started. In the 1950s, they talked about making intelligent robots, intelligent machines. And in the beginning, they relied on this, what's called the good old-fashioned AI, which means sort of programming and logics to make robots that follow rules that are defined by humans. So for example, if you have a robot in a kitchen that's cooking for you, you could program in a rule like if steak is well done, then turn it around. If not, keep cooking a bit more. So you try to program in all the rules that a robot should follow. And that works for simple tasks, but when tasks become more unpredictable, dynamic, or advanced, you can't program in all the rules about the world. So you can't make a self-driving car by programming in every rule it should follow. So therefore, more and more people are relying on using what's called machine learning for making robots, where they learn from examples instead of being programmed for each specific case. So in a sense, that's quite similar to how language models like ChatGPT are trained. ChatGPT is trained by giving it lots of examples of text on the internet, and then it learns to predict what comes next in that text. And so a robot can be trained in a bit the same way. You can put one of these language models into the brain of the robot, and then if you ask it, go make a coffee, it can ask its internal language model, how should I break this into smaller tasks? But then a robot doesn't just need language, it also needs vision, sensing, and acting. And so you can supplement this language understanding with what's called a vision model, which also many people are probably familiar with, because you can also give an image to ChatGPT and it can understand this image and describe the image to you. Similarly, a robot can use the same kind of model to understand what goes on around it. But what's very special for robots is that they also have actions. So you can also train up what's called a vision language action model, where based on examples, it can learn how do my actions influence the world around me. So for example, if a robot tries to push a coffee cup on a table, it learns that as I push, the coffee cup will move a bit further away from me. And if I push it over the edge, it will fall on the floor and so on.
AI is used to train robots, help them perceive and navigate different environments, interact with people, and make smarter decisions. AI-powered robotics is expected to change the job market as we know it today. The stats vary, but some significant changes will and are already happening. That's probably why the connection between AI and robotics raises so many questions. This is Maxim. He's the DJ mixing AI-generated music at the Oslo event, and he's also a Microsoft employee.
How to make sure that use of AI for robotics or any other use case is responsible from your side?
And this is August, a student in innovation and entrepreneurship.
What is the ethical implications that happens when robotics and artificial intelligence advance, and what precautions do we have to take as a world?
I think of robotics sort of as a tool, a technology, and like all other technology, it won't really be safe and responsible unless the user of it is safe and responsible. So to a large degree, making sure that technology is safe is a responsibility of a country that makes the regulations about how to use that technology in the country, and also agreements between countries. So one example is this European AI Act that came out a year or two ago, where they made some very clear rules for what we can use AI for, and depending on the task we use it for, what sort of preconditions we have to take, what we have to be careful about. And there are similar European rules for production machinery and so on that will also could be connected to robotics that will apply to certain kinds of robots. So to make these sort of national and multinational agreements is a good way to make robot research and production responsible.
Law could be a powerful tool to limit the unethical use of AI, but will it be enough? This is probably still an open question, one we may explore in future episodes of Euronews Tech Talks. But what is known is that there are some questions around the impact that robots can have on our jobs. Just 1 month ago, the New York Times reported on an internal strategy document from the e-commerce giant Amazon, which suggested that the company aims to automate 75% of its operations. Amazon said that the document viewed by the New York Times was incomplete and didn't represent the overall hiring strategy of the company. Yet the report raised concerns, especially considering that Amazon is one of the largest employers in the United States. A mix of curiosity and concern is also palpable in Oslo, where Marion, a volunteer with the World Economic Forum's Global Shapers community in the Norwegian capital, shared her questions.
Where do you think the future of robotics will be in 2030? How do you think robotics will influence our day-to-day life in the future?
There are quite a lot of different challenges that we will face because of relying more on AI and robotics in the future, for sure. So first of all, there are some jobs we do now that we don't really have to do, other jobs that will be assisted by robots and by AI. If you think a little bit about it, that's not completely unique to the future. That's also been happening in the last 30, 40 years. Everybody's job has changed quite a lot due to the use of computers in their daily tasks. For example, 30 years ago, people didn't use the internet at work, and it's almost impossible to imagine in my job how I would do that job without the internet. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a completely abrupt change. And I think it will also happen a little bit gradually, that people start to apply little by little more advanced AI and robotics. But some jobs will probably disappear, and it's quite important for countries to also have support for those whose job doesn't need to be done anymore. So one thing that's especially been gaining a lot of progress in the last years are these humanoid robots that can help people at home, but it's sort of their intelligence that's not quite where it needs to be for them to replace a human worker for a given task. But progress on those is quite fast, so I think we'll see more and more of those being applied both in people's homes and in workplaces in the coming years. I think in 2030, we'll see some of the earliest adopters have these kind of robots in their home to help them with daily tasks. But they'll maybe be a bit too expensive, and they'll maybe break a bit too often for the average user to have them at home. So that will maybe come a little bit later.
This is Magnus, chairman of the Student Entrepreneurship Fund in Oslo.
I am really wondering what is going to happen when almost half of the globe has their own robot walking behind them. What is going to happen? Is there enough room for it? Are they going to fight each other? How are they going to be friends? Who are going to control them? All of these questions is really, really bothering me.
So that's kind of a topic that has been raised quite a lot in the last years. And in the field of AI, there's kind of a 50-50 split, more or less, between people who think that these are risks that are really serious that we should worry about, and those that think that this is in the world of science fiction, more or less. I guess myself, I'm somewhere in between. So AI is a kind of unique technology because it can set its own goals, it can learn itself, and it can learn things that we don't necessarily fully understand. So it's possible to lose control of an AI system because it has found a solution that we can't really fully understand. So for example, if we ask an AI system to optimize production of some product at a factory, it can maybe, part of the solution to that can maybe be things that are not what we intended them to be. So we have to be careful, and I think it's important to invest in research on AI safety, research that checks out what AI systems are thinking, try to explain what's going on inside, and make sure that they're safe. Because there's also sort of a lot of bad scenarios that are not fully post-apocalyptic, but where we lose control and have bad societal consequences because of that. Like things like financial crashes caused by AI trading bots, or things like spreading misinformation and so on, because algorithms online get more clicks that way.
That's all for today's episode of Euronews Tech Talks. We hope you enjoyed our trip to Oslo, because we're staying in the city for the next 2 episodes. We'll be talking about robots and AI, and about robots and mental health. Until then, don't forget that you can also listen to Euronews Tech Talks on YouTube. In this episode, you can even meet Tiago and Kai in a short video we recorded while we were there. The link is available in the description. And last but not least, we've launched another podcast. It's called Brussels, My Love. Every Friday, my colleague Maeve McMahon and her brightest minds in Brussels will be your guide to the latest EU developments. You can find it on your favourite podcast platforms. Thanks for listening. I'm your host, James Thomas. This series was created by Marta Rodriguez Martinez. This episode was written and produced by Alice Carnevali. The theme music is by Leo Lebrun. Sound editing and sound mixing is by Joanne Breton. The video was recorded and edited by Rosalind Min. Our editor-in-chief is Niaz Samedizada. If you aren't already, you can listen to this series on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Castbox, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you're enjoying the podcast, please consider leaving us a positive review and, of course, sharing it. Thanks for listening.